If the US can give Ukraine over $45 billion, why can't they nationalize healthcare? It's not $45 billion for Ukraine. It's $45 billion for US weapons manufacturers to send arms to Ukraine. It's not that they can't, they don't want to. The US spends $34 trillion per year on healthcare. That's part of why $45 billion isn't nothing healthcare terms. But think roughly 100 times as much. That money would have to come from somewhere. There would have to be a plan to replace private insurance and payment systems. It's not only money. It's logistics. Where the American military shines and the American healthcare system doesn't. I'm all for single-payer healthcare of some kind. But it's a bigger problem to solve than arming Ukraine. Nationalizing healthcare will cost way more than $45 billion. Giving $45 billion in weapons is not exactly the same thing as $45 billion in USD. They're not remotely the same orders of magnitude. Bernie Sanders's Medicare for All plan would cost $3,800 billion per year. 85 times more than the $45 billion for Ukraine. I believe we should fund universal health care in the US, but let's not pretend we can fund it by cutting aid to Ukraine. $45 billion in equipment that is just gathering dust in a warehouse and that was paid for decades ago. Any idea how much universal health care $45 billion would buy? Like 1 week. Probably because the government currently spends $4.3 trillion annually on healthcare. There are 1,000 billions in 1 trillion. It's a lot. They just don't, since too many people get rich off the current system. If there was universal health coverage and $45 billion to cover the population of the US and its territories, that equates to approximately $136 per person. The cost is immense. That $45 billion wasn't like cash or a check, it's equipment and weapons. Universal healthcare is cheaper than private insurance. Healthcare is much more expensive than $45 billion. And 66% of the federal budget is already used for just 3 social programs: Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. https fiscaldata.treasury.gov/americasfinanceguide/federal spending/914B for healthcare, 755B for Medicare. Why do you think 45B will make a difference? Healthcare spending in the US per year is measured in the trillions, not billions. 4.7 trillion in 2021. I'm not saying we don't need a national healthcare system, but Ukraine is not the reason we don't have it. 1. It's $45 billion for American weapons systems, which means a fair portion of that is recycled right back through the economy. 2. Russia is one of the US's biggest rivals. Even if they're not very much a match. Then again, who is? And we're getting a huge discount on international sabotage. Russia competes with the US in multiple markets. Think of it like an investment. 3. We are getting a lot more bang for our buck, and the US healthcare issue is more complicated than the vast majority of commenters are implying, and I'm not even qualified to talk about it. Because nationalized healthcare would cost at least an extra $1 trillion per year, and $45 billion is a joke to be impressed by. That's less than half of what Indiana alone spends on Medicare and Medicaid budgets each year. I think many of the commenters don't understand what $45 billion means. We didn't just wire them $45 billion. It's money and assets, weapons and equipment and such. US spent close to $300 million a day. every day in Afghanistan for 20 years. 45 billion is about 150 days in Afghanistan. 5 months more or less. Plus it is an investment for the US, another country with a large border with Russia who sides with the West, weakening Russian military and economy, which was the whole 60s-80s Cold War. Getting Europe to start cutting off dependence on Russian oil, which helps NATO, since the whole point was to have a defensive alliance against Russia. And all of it while assisting a sovereign nation defend against Russian aggression. What happens over there matters here. I may not agree with plenty of the things the US government does. A lot of the world saw the military-industrial complex as extreme and unnecessary. But you know what? Seeing the world be able to fall back into war that can destabilize the world economy and threaten global security has governments across the globe rethinking priorities, and glad the US does what it does now that it's needed. If you want to wonder why we don't have universal healthcare, just look at the politicians and parties that have pushed against it for decades. I can't speak on the nationalized healthcare, but for what it's worth, the US using Ukraine as a proxy for war with Russia is absolutely worth it. Think about how perfect of a scenario it is for the US. Every dollar spent on equipping a Ukrainian to destroy a tank, kill an enemy Russian, and take down their missile is one less thing to be used against the US if a war broke out. Not to mention the intelligence gathered on the weapons being used in real combat. Absolutely worth it. Without getting into too much detail, we sent them 45 billion worth of support, most of which came from equipment and supplies already on hand. I can't speak to the entire list, but the stuff we sent them was our excess or old stuff that we are trying to phase out. The price tag assigned to it is grossly inflated but sounds cooler to our allies.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Eracast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.